So this is something people tend to do. I don't know whether it helps their algorithm, helps them get their YouTube account into more people's feeds, or whether they think people are interested in hearing who they are and why they are and why they're doing what they're doing, etc. I don't know. I thought I'd give it a shot anyway. So I was born in the late 70s. I'm pretty old. Into a working class family. And I've got a couple of brothers. Um, my parents didn't listen to music much, but in the car, we had one of those old 4-track cartridge things that probably most people have no idea what I'm talking about. Um, they were quite religious and they listened to what they called gospel music, but it's not the kind of gospel that you would picture. This is gospel music written and performed predominantly by white people. But whatever, I seem to quite like singing along to it. And I could sort of hold a note a bit. So singing was something I did from quite a young age, and I ended up in the school choir. I shared a bedroom with my older brother, and we used to listen to the top 40 and would record the top 40 off the radio on a sort of an little cassette recorder. I don't remember if we recorded the entire thing. I think we did, rather than just recording the songs we liked. I think we might have recorded the whole thing. It may have been that we started to run out of tape space, and I mean, we didn't keep them. I think we recorded over it anyway. I found that I quite liked, even at a young age, even like 6 or 7. I think I liked bands like The Cure and The Stranglers and Madness. Rather than stuff you might expect a young child to like. But from then, really, carried on listening to the top 40 and listening to and watching Top of the Pops on the TV. But I think felt like gradually there was less and less music in the charts that I liked, right up really until the mid '90s and the Britpop thing happened, and I got much more interested in music again then. Around that time, there were some friends who were getting a band together, and me and a few other friends would just go along and hang out with them while they practiced. One day, the guitarist got me up to sing, and shortly after that, the lead singer had a summer job and he couldn't practice, couldn't rehearse at the weekends, so I took over, and that was kind of that. At first, we were just doing cover versions of like Oasis, the Beatles, the Charlatans, that kind of thing. But we talked about writing our own stuff, and I kind of tried to, but I didn't play an instrument at that time, so I found I didn't really work for me, and I didn't really feel like it was something I could do with other people. I always felt like it just didn't feel right. It felt like these writing songs was something I sort of needed to do on my own. So I started trying to learn guitar. So my dad played guitar in one of these white gospel groups in the 70s, and the guitar was still around the house, and he still played it. So when there was nobody in the house, because I was kind of embarrassed about it, really embarrassed about learning, I used to pick up this guitar, and I borrowed an Oasis tab book from the guitar player in the band. And as most people will kind of know, Oasis songs can be pretty easy. They're pretty easy to play, pretty basic chords and so on. So I taught myself a couple of Oasis songs that I knew, and then I could, I gradually I kind of learned more chords and got better at it. And I was by that point, by the time I was really becoming a sort of very kind of basic guitar player. By the time I could kind of play enough, just about, I'd already started writing my own stuff. They were pretty maudlin to begin with, especially. I'd always been a really anxious and depressed kid, and that was what came out initially. But I realised they needed to be a bit more upbeat, and I managed to write some more lively and less depressing songs. We managed to play a couple of gigs, a couple of little pub gigs, basically just to friends. But for various reasons that I won't bore you with, it didn't last. Then after leaving uni, I moved to Manchester, and Manchester being Manchester, it wasn't long before I met a bunch of guys who were getting a band together and needed a guitar player, and I liked the stuff they were doing, so I joined. Um, at first, I had some creative input. There were three of us that contributed to songs, and we did lead vocals for the songs that we'd written. But over time, I don't know whether the lead singer didn't really was less keen on my songs or what, I don't know. But it became much more. He it was basically all his songs after a while, and so I didn't really write anything. But I got loads of experience in that band. We played loads of gigs. We did recording. Um, we played all the kind of Manchester sort of live music venues that Night and Day Cafe, Roadhouse, which has long since closed down, unfortunately. Academy 3, loads of places around Manchester, and it was pretty good. We played a lot. We had some airplay. We're on the radio a little bit on XFM Manchester. Oh, we were on TV as well. Yeah, Channel M in Manchester. That it didn't last long after that. So yeah, I hadn't been writing very much, but then the financial crash happened, and I lost my job and my career basically. While I was looking for jobs, I was learning a lot about. I'd always been left wing, and I was kind of hating the Tories, was sort of in my DNA. But I started to realise quite how much the media, establishment politicians, and wealthy people were kind of managed to look after themselves at the expense of people who give them power and create their wealth and actually sort of pay for them to exist, by buying their products and services and newspapers and whatever. And it made me fucking angry, basically, seeing what was going on and learning more about it. And I started writing about that stuff. But I needed a new band, really, to do something with those songs. I carried on in the other band, but I wasn't really creative in that band, so I needed another band. And I actually managed to get a lineup together, and we started rehearsing the songs. But then my wife, we weren't married at the time, but my wife got an opportunity in Edinburgh, and I didn't have a proper job. I was scratching around for work, so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we moved to Edinburgh. I didn't actually know anybody there, but I managed to get a band together, and it wasn't really very long. It didn't take as long before we started gigging on the small but loyal Edinburgh music circuit. So these were all my songs that I'd been writing, and while we were kind of working on getting some of my songs right, I was writing others, and I'd bring them into the band. So we played quite a lot of gigs around Edinburgh. As I said, it's quite small but really loyal. You'd see the same people at different gigs, even though you didn't know them. I guess people liked live music in Edinburgh. There wasn't a lot of it, so they would go to all the little gigs, it was great. It made it feel kind of really welcoming and supportive and stuff. So it was nice. And my songs got a little airtime on digital radio and podcasts and some positive online reviews. Edinburgh was always going to be a temporary thing. We again, for reasons I won't bore you with, we had to move back to Manchester. We were only there for 3 years, and we moved back to Manchester. Not long after that, I became a parent, and obviously then it was much harder to find the time and the space to write anything, and I didn't really fancy joining a band at that time. I never really stopped trying to write songs, but I didn't produce much, and really until COVID came along. My contract extension was unceremoniously binned, meaning I had to find a new job amidst a global pandemic while also homeschooling the kid. I did find a new job, albeit one I didn't want, and the kid went back to school. But a few months later, I had what you might call a shed collapse. I couldn't work. I couldn't function. My brain just gave out on me. And really, over the next couple of years, I had, I think, 3 periods in total where chunks of sick leave where I literally couldn't work. In the middle of that, I had to change jobs again. So I was kind of really struggling to function. And all I could do really, the most important thing to me was to kind of be a functioning parent. So, you know, um, yeah, work was tough, still is. Um, but having that kind of sickness absence kind of gave me a little bit of, I was off for 6 weeks and then a couple of months and then I think another 6 weeks again or something like that, um, over a period of about 3 years. And I started writing about my experiences, and there was, I always kind of need to get out what's going on in my head somewhere or other. Suddenly, kind of in 2022, it became obvious that I was autistic. And fortunately, at that time, I had a bit of money, and I could afford to get a private assessment. Otherwise, I might still be waiting for one. So yeah, I was diagnosed as autistic. They also suggested I probably have ADHD, and now kind of understanding it, I really think I do. I don't have that diagnosis yet. I've been waiting years for that diagnosis. But really, since that, and since I've kind of decided I'm unlikely to ever play any songs live. I mean, I just don't enjoy it. I did a little acoustic thing with a friend recently, a year or so ago, where we played some covers, and I just didn't enjoy it. And so I don't think that's something I'm ever really going to do again, or unlikely to. So I thought I'd spend a bit more time on recording, bit more of an effort with recording. Try to polish them a bit better with the limited skills that I've got. So here we are. That's kind of it, really. Strange Old Hermit seemed like an appropriate name for a neurodivergent guy in his late 40s, who prefers to hide away at home than go out. And it's also how Luke Skywalker refers to Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Strange Old Hermit.
So it's a Star Wars reference too. So that's it, really. Yeah. Probably not very interesting, but that's me.